Hello and welcome to the Dailies. The release of the Epstein files seized attention in the United States and abroad, dominating headlines with controversy over redactions, missing material and political accountability, and also briefly pushing other global issues out of focus. In the Middle East, Israel advanced a parallel push, preparing an intelligence dossier ahead of a planned meeting between Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump, seeking to persuade Washington to back renewed action against Iran and move from coordination to concrete decisions. We'll start with the Epstein files, as American media largely framed the release as a process failure rather than a revelation, emphasizing heavy redactions, briefly missing documents, and unanswered questions. Coverage focused on political fallout, including pressure on the Justice Department and scrutiny involving Donald Trump and Pam Bondi. Many outlets also highlighted victims' frustration, noting that the disclosures so far offered little clarity or accountability. The Washington Post traces a fast-moving clash between Congress and Justice Department over the release of the Epstein records, framing it as a test of transparency and political will. The piece explains that lawmakers like Ro Khanna and Thomas Macy threatened contempt proceedings against Attorney General Pam Bondi, accusing the department of selective disclosure. The report emphasizes process, laying out legal requirements, official explanations, and bipartisan frustration, while underscoring how the handling of the files, including material touching Donald Trump, how it risks prolonging political and public distrust. The Post also revealed details from the latest Epstein document release, a 1996 FBI complaint alleging child pornography that had never before been publicly acknowledged. The piece recounts the story of Maria Farmer, who says she warned federal authorities years before any investigation began, and also using the newly released files and reactions from Farmer and her sister. The report shows how the government documented but did not act on serious allegations. Other publications emphasized the need to examine the files without fueling confusion or conspiracy. Ankush Karduri writes in Politico, offering a clear, disciplined guide for navigating the release of the Epstein files. The author, a former federal prosecutor, lays out 5 rules. First, don't try to interpret raw documents on your own. Also, understand what different records actually represent. Remember that sleazy behavior is not the same as criminal conduct, and be skeptical of early selective releases. And also closely watch what material involving Donald Trump is disclosed or delayed. The piece argues that poorly contextualized files can mislead the public and be weaponized politically. British media, on the other hand, treated the Epstein files as a morality and power story, focusing on elite access, reputational damage, and scandal rather than process. Coverage emphasized figures such as Prince Andrew, or formerly Prince Andrew, framing the release as fresh evidence of institutional failure and privilege. Less attention was paid to U.S. legal mechanics, with more weight given to symbolism, accountability, and hypocrisy at the top. The Telegraph details newly surfaced allegations from the Epstein files that cast fresh light on a December 2000 weekend hosted by formerly Prince Andrew at Sandringham. Drawing also on household staff accounts and newly released photograph, the piece disputes Andrew's claim that the gathering was a routine shooting party. Staff reportedly found gift baskets in guest bathrooms containing sex, drugs, toys, poppers, and lubricant, items never present during other royal visits and approved by someone in authority. The report also notes that Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were invited separately, contradicting Andrew's assertion that Epstein was merely a +1. The piece portrays the weekend as a misuse of royal access that shocked staff and tarnished one of the monarchy's most private estates. The Guardian argues that the newly released Epstein images deepen the case that Prince Andrew acted as a gateway to elite British society for Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. The analysis included photos from Sandringham, Balmoral, and also Ascot, and they all show repeated access to royal spaces, reinforcing biographers' claims that Andrew was exploited as a, quote, useful idiot, unquote. Now, the piece also frames the images as vindicating King Charles's III decision to strip Andrew of titles, portraying a friendship that damaged both the monarchy and Andrew himself. Other stories grabbed headlines in the US. J.D. Vance at the Turning Point USA America Fest. Newsweek frames J.D. Vance as using Turning Point USA to position himself as a unifier and also heir to the MAGA movement. The piece, as you can see, describes how speaking at America Fest, honoring late founder Charlie Kirk, Vance called for openness and restraint after public disputes on stage. The piece highlights deep divisions within the coalition over Israel, religion, immigration, and also identity, and shows how Turning Point USA is embracing debate while backing Vance as a figure who might hold the fractured movement together ahead of 2028. The Wall Street Journal reported on a sudden internal clash at the CBS News after a completed 60-minute segment was pulled just before airing. The segment examined a maximum security prison in El Salvador, where the Trump administration sent hundreds of Venezuelan migrants, and included interviews also with deported men who said they endured brutal and torturous conditions. The piece explains how correspondent Sharon Alfonsi wrote in a private email that editor-in-chief Barry Weiss spiked the story for political reasons, noting it had been screened multiple times, legally cleared, and also already promoted. The report also quotes CBS, who said the report needed additional reporting, highlighting a rare public dispute over editorial judgment and newsroom independence. To the Middle East, as Israel Hayom reports that Israel is preparing a detailed intelligence dossier ahead of an expected Florida meeting between Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump, aimed at persuading Washington to back new action against Iran. The report explains the dossier outlines claims that Iran is rebuilding its nuclear and missile capabilities and programs, expanding global terror operations, and also funding groups like Hamas and Hezbollah. It also highlights Israeli officials' hope to move talks from coordination to concrete decisions, weighing military strikes alongside harsher sanctions and efforts to exploit Iran's growing economic and internal instability. The Times of Israel reveals that Israeli intelligence flagged suspicious Hamas activity less than 24 hours before the October 7, 2023 attack, but failed to act on it. According to the report, drone operation over Gaza on October the 6th raised concerns about Hamas behavior, which were passed to the IDF forces, or the IDF Southern Command specifically. The warning was reportedly dismissed as routine Hamas training exercise. And also the piece concludes that such suspicions raise new questions about intelligence failures ahead of the Hamas assault. And we'll end with this opinion article by Amir al-Shobaki in Sharq al-Awsat, who argues that Israel's attempt to frame the Sydney attack as proof of inherent Arab or Muslim anti-Semitism collapsed because of the actions of Ahmed al-Ahmad. The author says Israeli officials use the attack to reinforce a familiar narrative that Jews are targeted because they are Jews, and Israel is attacked because it is Jewish, not because of occupation or policy. The author goes on to say that Al-Ahmad, who disarmed the attacker without killing him, is presented as a direct rebuttal to that claim. His actions, the piece argues, expose the false generalization of Arabs and Muslims as potential terrorists and undermined efforts to weaponize the tragedy for political ends. That's it for today. Thanks for watching the Dailies, only on Al Arabiya English.